Hello and welcome, I'm Liam the Music Reviewer. When I was 8 years old, I had to leave the cinema because I was crying during Scooby-Doo 2. And today we're going to be talking about the new Death Grips album, Year of the Snitch. If you've been a fan of this channel and haven't heard Death Grips, then you've probably not been paying attention, but Death Grips are an industrial, experimental, hip-hop, rock outfit that have easily been one of the most important acts of this decade, easily one of the most consistent in terms of their quality and their output. They seem to put out a record or release nearly every year, bar 2014 I think was the only year where they didn't release anything since their inception. And yeah, their influence and their quality just cannot be understated. This is their sixth studio album anyway, and so far they dropped so many tracks off here, it almost felt like they were trying to leak their own album, which obviously isn't unnatural for Death Grips considering they've done it before with other releases as well, but you would think because of how they went about releasing singles for Year of the Snitch that the songs would their impact would be lessened, or that because certain songs had more time to stick about that other ones wouldn't have had that much time to grow on you, that there would just be like a plethora of problems to come about from this kind of more unconventional release, and that can be any further from the truth. Obviously singles like Streaky that were the first ones to drop have grown on me a fair bit more. I felt a bit kind of when it first came out. I feel now, especially in the context of the album, that it definitely feels a lot better, a lot more refreshing as well. But that song kind of indicated that maybe this would be in a much more accessible style, that would be a lot more just kind of like clean, even though the album cover itself just looks disturbing, just utterly disturbing and unsettling. But the very first song on here, Death Grips Online, just could not be any drearier or murky if it was possible to. It almost feels like a noughties indie rock song that had just been like put into a bath submerged with black treacle, and it just been left there, like just been forgotten about, undisturbed, and only just now decided to kind of like rise again. And it feels like from Zach Hill's electronic drumming and that, you can still feel the ooze just is like set in there. It feels slightly Beastie Boy-ish at points for this track, but it just feels pretty unsettling. I think that was the overall feeling I had from my first listen of this album. I just felt kind of dirty, I think was probably the right word to use here. Was not helped by a song like Flies, which from an instrumental production standpoint definitely is not as dreary, but definitely does feel that kind of eeriness, especially when the drops come about kind of unexpected, and they still have an impact even if you've listened to the track beforehand. But the lyrics on here are just really unsettling and haunting, especially when MC Wright's talking about wishing and desiring for like flies to vomit on him to like erode his body and that, talk about wanting to like take a cyanide pill and die. It's not like groundbreaking in terms of how MC Wright has talked about this stuff before in other releases, but he doesn't lack the visceralness, or some would probably say is poeticness, in terms of how just gothic it can be at points. In terms of my interpretation of the album, there's been a few theories going about, especially with there's blatant references to the Manson murders and people that were involved in that, especially on the track Linda's in Custody, which I'm pretty sure references to Linda Kasabian, I think her name was, which was I think she's still about and only just turned 69, and she was an assailant to Manson's murders back when they happened. But I feel this is an album that is more self-aware than it is any sort of narrative or callback to these events. I think they're clearly just kind of like references and nods to it, in the same way that I don't think this album has any sort of kind of I don't think its Twin Peaks references really stand for much other than just throwaway references, despite the fact that I definitely did appreciate them because I'm an absolute stand for that shit. But I do think this is the most self-aware release to date, not helped by the fact that in terms of sampling and production, Death Grips seem to repeat themselves a little bit, and not in a case of they're doing the same old shit, because I'll go into how they have brought a lot more, they've came in from a more fresh perspective. One way I think this self-awareness is brought about is just by the sampling of themselves, and it kind of makes it sort of kind of transforms them a little bit. It's almost like if you're playing with you're playing with Lego and you're using all the different like bits and bobs from different sets to make this like just completely different original but just still cool as fuck thing. With the song Ha Ha Ha, there's Up My Sleeves, Black Dice, Lock Your Doors, all used, and just ends up creating one of the standout tracks, Ha Ha Ha, which just has one of the funniest choruses as well. But when I say, I think where most of this self-awareness comes from is from MC Ride and his lyrics. The production here is just as it always is, it's astounding. Andy and Zach just know what the hell they're doing, and they just never seem to have a hiccup in any sort of way, especially when some of my other favourite tracks are bringing in some new sounds, but MC Ride just seems to be kind of not holding back in his critiques about both himself and his fans with the two songs Dilemma and Disappointed. Dilemma is more kind of where it starts off with the director of Shrek 1 and 2 starting off with an intro, which doesn't really add too much. It's just kind of an intro, and I guess in a way that kind of shows how Death Grips know that their fan bases of these Shrek memes and Death Grip memes cross over. But the dilemma here is more the MC Ride thinks that he has some sort of responsibility for how deep he goes into how just dark his mindset is. He hasn't been very hesitant about saying how depressed or anxious or just how suicidal he's felt at various points during his career. But he seems now to be aware of just the impact that can have, which I think is important, and two, he does it in a way that is so very poetic. There is the line, "These knives bleed knives, they cut me, I cut you," which is, again, it's very simple, but it doesn't lack any sort of the kind of impact and the real message that it's trying to get across. On something like Disappointed, though, it's very much sassy, snarky, cynical Death Grips, where the complaints, the entitledness of Death Grips fans is mocked, where they're always saying, oh, they want more of this. They hated government plates when the band were just wanting to do what they wanted to do. Or they want the old Death Grips. They don't like the old Death Grips, and they basically just kind of personify it as them going wah 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 like babies, and this whole wah 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 vocal ends up becoming like a coarse synth of the song, which is cool as fuck. And that can really be said about this kind of whole album. I didn't really feel underwhelmed by many points on here, and that isn't just because I'm a huge fan of the band. I'm kind of aware of when some of the albums fall flat, and I have some sort of hot takes on albums like The Powers That Be. But there's just songs on here where they are definitely taking like a new path. It's also, I think, my favourite track out of all of these is The Fear, which, as I say, MC Ride's how confessional he is and how just utterly just down he feels at points. Just is all detailed over this jazzy hip hop kind of number, and it works perfectly. I don't think anyone was expecting a Death Grips jazz song to appear here, but it happens, and it's just great. It's great. It's one of the standout tracks from this album. This is obviously a first impressions thing, so like my opinions will probably change, but my only real complaints are to do with songs like Outro and Little Richard, because they do feel like they could be fleshed out a bit more. I feel that especially Little Richard, I think lyrically it's kind of, again, unsettling I feel like it could have been maybe just, don't know, just a bit more fleshed out. I feel like it's just missing something that would really give it that bite. And outro does feel kind of utterly kind of useless as far as I'm concerned. It's just kind of there, as an instrumental. It's not like Horn Section where like Zach Hill's drumming still utterly astounds me. Even though I've heard it both in his solo material in Hella and with Death Grips in general, still manages to surprise me with just how great he is there. But apart from that, that's kind of like really my only complaints. I'm really happy with just how the overall effect this album had on me in a way that I wasn't really expecting. I think this is going to be more of a grower for people. I don't think it's got the instant gratification that an album like The Money Store does when you show it to somebody, that kind of gets to them right away. But it's definitely not as bloated or as much of like as much of a kind of it's not much of a divide as something like The Powers That Be is, where for some people it goes on a bit too long, and for some people like myself think that yeah, it is a bit bloated. As I say, it feels like over the things like 37-38 minutes they explore a lot of different sounds, most of which I've explored to some extent, but the sampling, the self-awareness, and just how they transform these old samples and old sounds and make something new out of them. Like I say, with The Fear, with a kind of jazzy number, with the horn section where we just these individual components that sometimes people overlook and take just in favour of MC Ride, just ends up just becoming just a really, really satisfying product. And like just I think that's really all I've got to say about this album at the moment, in terms of like just my first impressions, and just as a quick review. In terms of a score, probably feeling a strong 8 on this. Let me know what you guys think, what your favourite songs are here, what you think are the weakest songs, how you think this stacks up in their discography in general. I've done a ranked piece, so I'll link that at the end of this so you can see what my thoughts are on it all. For me, I think this will probably end up being at the higher end of the kind of ranking than at the lower end. Just pretty good job here, and an album that I'll probably end up loving more as the year goes on, but we'll see. But yeah, as always, thank you for watching. Stay safe and stay hydrated.